All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I've got an amazing guest on today. I can't wait for you to get to know her better. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires BeliefCast. As you know, I call it a BeliefCast because I'm very passionate about belief systems. Because belief dictates behavior every single time. Many of you know my story. I grew up thinking something was wrong with me. And so I walked around with that belief and it dictated my behavior in a very negative way. But I'm passionate about it and that's changed and I'm grateful to be able to share that and also share this person with you today. Thanks for joining us, Mindy.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. Just a little information on Mindy real quick. She's been a fitness and food coach at the Life Center Athletic Club, which is an amazing place if you don't know about this. But she's been there for over 20 years. It's one of the best gyms in the state of Utah, in my opinion. She's an author of the book called The Body Joy Plan book. It's an online cookbook. She's also involved with the Body Gym. She's been on QVC, KSL, ABC, Fox 13. She's, been doing this for a long, long time. She's passionate about it. She has a very powerful belief system herself. I know she didn't always have that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And she's been through some ups and downs in her life, which we're going to get to know about. But I'm so excited to share this story with you today. And thanks for your support. And I hope you guys will not only listen to this, but share this podcast with everyone you know who needs to be inspired, because Mindy's very inspiring. And so anyway, that's a little intro on this wonderful person.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks for being here.
You are welcome.
It's bright and early.
Yes, it is, but that's okay.
Yeah, not for her. She's up early anyway. So, but yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your family, and kind of where you grew up, and just a little background on you, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Sandy, Utah. And I am the oldest of 6 kids. I have 4 brothers, and my cute sister didn't come along until I was in high school, and so I pretty much grew up with a bunch of boys and neighborhood full of boys. I wasn't real athletic. I danced, but I loved watching football, and I wasn't really into a ton of sports. My hobby was more kind of eating. And so
can be a good hobby, I guess.
Yeah. Well, not so much. Not so much. I know there's a lot of people that you've worked with, and with your story, it was maybe drugs or substances, and I dealt with the hard stuff with food, which wasn't really the best. So
when did that start? Like when you noticed that? Was that younger than high school?
Yeah.
Even?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And I feel like it started even in elementary. So I've had a kidney condition that I've managed since birth, and I use food to make me feel better. When I couldn't move or was physically in pain, I would turn to food. Every time I would go to the doctors and we'd be done, I'd get a treat after. Usually I'd go get some Tootsie Rolls at the pharmacy when we were picking up medicine. My dad would always let me pick out a little treat too. And so I've kind of done that my entire life.
So it's kind of an escape almost?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a relief from what you were going through.
Definitely.
Okay.
So I never felt the need, even as a teenager, to turn to anything that was, I guess I was more nervous, and obviously my parents talked to me about what drugs and alcohol could do. And I remember the first week of 6th grade in junior high, I sat next to a old ninth grader in math, and he actually overdosed in class and fell over with his chair and was in a rehab and ended up actually passing away within a couple weeks. And that was enough to instill fear in me that was not a way to go.
Yeah, I can imagine seeing that as a kid, how scary that would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I was overwhelmed to be in there with the older kids anyway, but to watch that happen and to know it wasn't even anything that was illegal. It was something over the counter, and it happened at lunch, and we were the period right after lunch, and I just
Wow.
knew I would never touch anything that wasn't.
Yeah. How old were you again when that happened?
So what? Sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
So I was a little sixth grader, and he
Wow.
was a.
That kind of turns
Back
your
when
world upside
freshmen
down.
were in junior high, because
Oh,
I had
yeah.
4 years in junior high
Okay.
instead of 4 years in high school.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that was enough to know I did not want to go down. I didn't want to turn to that.
Right.
So
when did you know, like, when did you realize that maybe food was a problem? Like you using that? Did you realize that at that young age as well? Or?
I probably started figuring that out in junior high around that age, because I would do it. I would be a kind of a closet eater. It wasn't when I was binging or turning to food and eating more than I knew I should, to where I didn't feel good. I was probably in junior high, and I was never doing it in front of my family. It would be when my parents, when I would get home from school, and if my mom needed to go to the store and stuff, she would kind of leave me in charge with my brothers and stuff, but I would do it without them knowing, and it wouldn't be like a bowl of Lucky Charms was my thing back then. I would be the box, and I would kind of eat the box, or I'd eat all the marshmallows out of the box, or I'd get out the bag of marshmallows and not have like a handful or two. I would eat the bag, and it's actually stuff that I haven't even really sat down and talked to my family about. This was kind of my thing. It was once I started, my doctor, who was super wise at the time, I felt, because back in the early 90s, people weren't saying when you had health issues, they weren't saying go see a trainer, go see a nutritionist. Right. Some of your symptoms could be managed by your lifestyle. And so my doctor actually told me that the year that I had graduated high school, and said, I think you should look into this and go work with a trainer. You can go to, back in the day, Whole Foods used to be called Wild Oats. It was this little store, and they had a free nutritionist, because as a person just starting college, I had hardly any money. And so I went and started working with that woman, and then I found a trainer, and those two people changed my life so much that
and this was after high school? Yeah.
So the year that I graduated, pretty much.
So,
but that's when I decided, you know what, this is.
So were you really, I mean, I don't even know, were you overweight?
Yeah. I was never obese, but I remember in kindergarten being on the bus, being called Miss Piggy. Wow. And I've always felt so much bigger than looking back at pictures now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was chubby, but I wasn't obese. But I always felt like I was the little fat friend, because all of my girlfriends, especially, and my brothers, I mean, they were just teeny. And most guys, I think, are leaner, obviously, even at that age. They were just little and super skinny, and I was not, and I was always just shorter and curvier. But my girlfriends were tall. My one best friend, even at the time, was a model, actually, in junior high even, and she did pageants, and so tall and lean, and we just didn't have the same body type. But I totally compared myself to her, and none of my friends ever made me feel heavy. My family never made me feel heavy. It was in my head. And so I would avoid, even as a teenager, I rarely went to the pool with my friends. I didn't go Raging Waters and to go to Lagoon where they were swimming if it had to do with a bathing suit. I didn't go, and I worked, and so I'd use that as my excuse if I really didn't work. But looking back, I was so sad now on how many things I missed out of just because of my perception of myself. Yeah.
Well, it was the belief you had about yourself.
Yes.
And it dictated your behavior.
Yeah.
So you avoided all these things. That was your behavior. You stayed, you isolated maybe at times. And isn't that fascinating how that one belief held you back on a lot of ways?
It's so sad how many opportunities I missed out on.
So tell me about, and again, I just want to get more into this, and this is fascinating to me. So you had a kid call you Miss Piggy.
Yeah, and I remember it was specifically in kindergarten, because I only rode the bus in kindergarten until our elementary was built, and I didn't bus in elementary other than that. But
Really?
yeah.
Do you remember, did that play a role in how you felt about yourself from that point forward, you think, a little bit, or?
Well, I feel like that was when I remember feeling like, well, I'm fat. And I hated how bad that word made me feel. And it's so funny because my kids now growing up, the F word in my house, I remember when my daughter came home in elementary, it was like, Mom, did you know there was more than one F word? Because that was a word I just thought we never say this word. We never call anyone that. That's just a word we don't use because it is.
Because of your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was such a big deal to me. Plus, obviously, being in the job I have now, too, I do work with everyone from health conditions to morbidly obese people. Right. And I thought that's not going to be part of our language. We're never going to call anyone that. And we see people how they are, not for what size they are.
Right.
So.
Wow. Well, that's amazing that you're teaching your daughters this, especially at a young age. I work with a lot of females as well, where they have a lot of body image issues.
Yeah.
And it starts really, really young. And it's a tough thing. It's kind of sad to see that happen.
And there's that. I mean, that's with enough pressure just in the real world. Back when we were kids, we didn't have social media, right?
Right. Yeah.
And now images, it's so hard that all of our judgments initially are on image and how you judge yourself. And even when I have 2 teenage daughters right now, when we look on Instagram and stuff, it's almost like most comments are about just how you look, period, not about a quality or an attribute that you have. And I'm like, it's so sad that people are so much more than you are cute or.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love your posts on social media, because I know you're not that way. You're talking about the mind, body, and spirit and all that stuff with what you do, and it's not focused on, hey, you look amazing, which is good at some point, but there's so much more.
It's not everything, right? And especially as teenagers, that is something that we put so much value in, and we can't always look like our edited, perfect Pinterest and Instagram posts. You know, it's really rare that we ever really do look like that. And so. Well,
so after high school, you got involved with these, trainers that were helping you, and you loved it so much. Is that what led you to going, you know what, I want to do this? Yeah,
I was actually so when I graduated in pre-law, I was going to law school. I had nothing to do. All of my education at the U had nothing to do with health and wellness and fitness. I thought I wanted to be a judge. And so, that was my plan. That was my life plan.
You don't hear very many girls, I want to be a judge, right?
I knew, I'm like, I'm going to have to be an attorney to do that. So law school was on my radar, and that's what I thought. But my trainer had changed my life so much. And the fact that it was kind of crazy, because as a kid growing up, as uncomfortable as I was being a little overweight, it was never the motivation for me to actually do something to change. But I would do anything to not have to go to the urologist for my kidney condition, to feel good. And when I started feeling better and my life was changing in what not just how I felt and getting in and having less pain and figuring out what foods were actually making things worse, or to think that, God, I could use food to make me better and not have to be on a medicine to make me better and not have side effects. That was huge. But then, yes, some weight started coming off, but my confidence came more from the strength I was building, how I felt. I loved, I can't say I loved those first couple sessions, because they kicked my trash, and I actually threw up a few times in the parking lot, and my trainer never realized that until I had to say, like, the second or third week. And he's like, okay, we're going a little too hard, too fast, because we shouldn't get to that point. And so it was super humbling, but it was so empowering and so inspiring that I thought, you know what? I want to keep doing this for myself, but as the longer I worked with him, I just thought, you know what, he has the best job ever. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
and I was already working. I've kind of worked my entire life, which I love that I've been able to do that.
Sure.
But I thought, that is to help people, to have your own schedule.
Right.
And I was thinking, as a female, this would be an awesome thing to have. Maybe it wouldn't bring me the income that being an attorney would,
Right.
but I just felt like I wanted a career that was that rewarding.
Yeah.
And so it totally changed my life.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing what you love and earning a living at it. Isn't that great?
It's awesome.
Beautiful.
I know.
So you obviously started feeling better about yourself. When did you had a belief system when you were younger that, maybe you were a little chubbier and you were self-conscious of it and it kept you from doing things, right?
Yes.
And you probably at times maybe felt sad and depressed about that.
Yes.
When did that change? When did that belief system flip for you where you no longer maybe viewed yourself in that light anymore? Do you remember when that happened?
I think it was probably right at the end, more at the end of high school and going into college, because I've always had great groups of friends that were supportive and awesome. And with my trainer, I started realizing that, you know what, he did have me do belief statements and I am statements. And
awesome.
I remember one of my sessions, I was paying out of pocket as a college kid, and you don't have a lot of money, right? I was actually working 3 jobs and paying for my school at the U. And so that was a huge sacrifice just to pay to do those sessions.
Sure.
But I was so insecure about myself. I would always have a sweatshirt tied around my waist. And after a couple months of working with my trainer, he said, we're not leaving the office until you leave that sweatshirt in here. And we're going to go work out. I wasted 30 minutes of my session because I was in tears because I just thought there's no way I can go out there and be seen without being hidden.
Wow.
And so
interesting.
And so that was something that I remember that was a huge moment in shifting my beliefs. But I started thinking, you know what? I have all these awesome friends that have so many cool qualities and they're so confident, but they are focused. They're not just focused on what they look like. They're focused on what they do and how what they are and all these blessings that they have. And as many struggles as I had so many blessings too, but I wasn't really putting a lot of attention on that.
Yeah, right.
And I think my religion, being very Christian, that helped. And so I started implementing more positive self-talk and trying to fake it till I kind of really believed that. And still, even though I don't know if you're like this too, but even though now I'm in my 40s, there's still, when I have challenges, sometimes it's easy to let some of those negative or old tapes that would run through my head come back in. And so I have to refocus on that. But using those positive belief statements or gratitudes are huge for me. I loved in the podcast you did with Joey White. Was it number 2?
Yeah, it was number 2.
Okay, so I loved how he said, write down 3 positives a day or think about 3 gratitudes. I use that with my clients all the time.
That's awesome.
Second you have a negative belief, replace it with 3 things that you are good at, or the things that are blessings to you, or things that you're grateful for, so you can get back into that mode of gratitude versus depression or negativity. And so,
well, this is why she's so successful at what you do. You're very inspiring. It's beautiful. I want to jump back just a little bit so you go to this session with your personal trainer and he's like, you're not leaving here until you take off the sweatshirt around your waist. Describe, maybe, if you remember, like leaving that office without that. What did you feel like almost like you were naked and people were like looking at you funny, or what did it feel like?
I guess I was full of a lot of anxiety and fear. And it was hard to not go to whatever you use as that clutch for security, whether it's a substance or a food or how you dress.
Yeah.
I did. I felt very exposed and vulnerable,
Right.
and some of the negative beliefs that I felt like I've had to work on overcoming as a kid was perfectionism.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was thinking, oh, I'll quit tying that around my waist when I'm at my goal.
Yeah.
And his point was helping me see, you know what, you are fine how you are,
Mm-hmm.
and you can still work on making yourself better.
Right.
But you don't have to wait to be free and enjoy life until you achieve your goal.
Right.
You can find joy in the process and happiness while you're in the middle of working on being better.
Right.
And
I love that.
there's nothing, I love progress over perfection. That's something that I work with my clients. That's or that beautiful. I have to work with on my own mindset, making sure, okay, we don't need to be perfect ever,
right.
but we need to focus on progressing and being better, because we're happier when we're better. We're not happy when we're perfect, or when we try to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's too, we're not expected to, but it's such a huge burden to carry, and especially as a teenager.
For sure.
I mean, we make mistakes all the time, and that was something that was really hard for me. Mistakes just made me feel so overwhelmed, and it
not good enough.
Yeah, and all of those, and comparison. You never really compare your worst to other people's worst. You're always comparing yourself to their best. And so I just felt like I screwed up so much, but I was making mistakes just like everyone else. That's how we learn and grow, but I wasn't focusing on the benefits of mistakes. I was focusing on, I would get kind of stuck in the mistake and those feelings that you have when you make a mistake.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to move past that.
Wow.
So
that's incredible. That is incredible how you push through that, and that you teach this now with your clients. Can you remember one of your I am statements that really maybe stood out to you, that back then, where that was the one I said all the time that really kind of lit my soul on fire kind of thing?
Well, I guess it would be, I would have different ones, and I would kind of have a list and read through more of a list. And I use that in my mindset part in my book. And there's a huge list of a bunch of bullet points. But feeling I am strong was one that I used a lot, because I felt like that helped me withstand whatever, if I had the temptation to kind of binge, or if I started feeling negative thoughts, I was stronger to overcome those. So that was one that was big for me. I am safe was a big one, because when you grow up in a lot of physical pain and fear around health problems, and not even the health problem, but the procedures and the testing that you would go through, gave me a lot of anxiety. And so being safe was important to me. And I am loved. And that was something, too, that I felt like, I don't know why that was such an important thing to help me remember, because I didn't ever feel unloved from my family. But sometimes it's self-love was like I always knew that they loved me, but I didn't love myself all the time. And so that's something that I feel like, it kind of doesn't matter how many people love you if you don't love yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so
that's a big one.
And that I'm just that I am enough as I am. Things like that.
I love that, the love of self kind of concept. I teach that to my clients as well, because I believe love of self will prove to be the most powerful antidote over any unwanted or addictive behaviors, period. And one of the things I do with my clients, like if they have younger kids, I would say, like, if their DOC, which means your drug of choice, if their DOC is alcohol, I would say, would you ever give alcohol to your kids? They're like, never. And I'm like, why? They're like, because I love them. And then I would say, well, as soon as you love you as much as you love your kids, you're not going to put that in your body anymore. And it just makes them go, oh, I never thought of it that way. So what you're saying there, and I totally agree with you, is about, it doesn't matter. You can have everyone in the world love you, but if you don't love you, it doesn't matter. So it's so important that we love ourselves.
Yeah, well, and here's something that's sad too. I could want the client that would be like my poster child person. If you were to come into the gym, it's the person that everyone's like, oh, I want to look like that person. My lady who was that for years and years was the most unhappy person that I had worked with.
Really?
And I have clients with cancer and brain tumors and Parkinson's disease and all these ailments and conditions, not just overweight.
Right.
She was the healthiest of all of them, but her self-image was the worst. But yeah, she looked great on the outside. And if people really knew how she felt about herself and her unhappy existence, they would not trade their life for hers in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And so that's where too, it's like, oh, comparing is such a thief of joy. But I feel like when we're turning to all these other things to deal with our emotions, that's what we're doing. And so I love how if the second we catch ourselves doing that, if we can focus on, okay, everything that you're grateful for, because you can't be depressed and grateful at the same time. You can't be in a negative mindset and a positive one at the same time. And so I think that that's just something you always have with you and that you can do in a second. But I feel like not just saying those things, you have to write them down.
Yeah.
And so just like goals, if you say you want to do something and you don't write it down, that's just a wish. For whatever reason, there's so much power in physically writing things down.
It really is. Yeah, I've noticed that too.
You gotta write them down and put them on stickies and put them in your mirror or in your car or where you see them. And so I had little stickies all over the place and even in my kitchen, because that was my place where my triggers were to use my drug of choice.
Right.
And with food, you can't not eat, right? You need it to live. And so you have to learn how to manage it, but still you can't cut it out of your life. And so sometimes I would even now, sometimes if I feel like, okay, right now I'm not doing great with using this food the way it should be used, sometimes I'll put stickies in reminding me of my goal, or
I love that,
to go do something else instead of eat if I'm not really hungry.
Yeah.
So I feel like you got to write down those positives or what you want to become.
Right. I love that. It goes with the old saying, where attention goes, energy flows.
Yes. I
so
believe that
all your
100%.
attention was on your sticky notes and all that stuff. And you know, what's cool is you're sitting there saying these things. I think about how successful you've been, but I think people don't realize how hard you've worked. Like from being called Miss Piggy in kindergarten all the way up to what you're doing now, like, and the effort you put into changing your belief system around you and your world. I mean, I think maybe people don't really fully understand how hard you've worked. Is that fair?
Yeah. And you know what? I love that, because the person that pops into my head is Michael Jordan. Right. And I've listened to I've read some of his books and listened to him interviewed, and he would always say, I mean, we just look at his titles and all the baskets that he made. He's missed twice as many that he's ever made, and he didn't even make his high school team, right? Or was it his junior high team? I think it was his
sophomore year he
was cut. And that, I mean, we only look at his fame, and everyone who is great struggles and works hard and has had to earn it, right? I don't know very many, just like you too, you know, you had to work hard to be where you're at today.
For sure. Yeah.
And so it's not easy for anyone.
Yeah.
But I think that especially with like a teenage mindset, you think that you're the only one struggling, and that I don't know why we always think that we're the only one with problems, or we're the only one that has a struggle with being accepted and feeling like we have friends or feeling good enough. And I think every single one of your podcasts, every person has brought that up.
Yeah, for sure.
So we all have struggles, but we can all be great. We have so much potential in us, and it's awesome to know that our worth comes from within us, and what we're capable of, not with what we look like. Or
exactly. Wow, that's awesome. Well, if you could, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Um, if you could go back to your 16-year-old self, what advice would you tell yourself? Knowing what you know now, if you could go back, what would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Oh, to be more happy now,
Wow.
and that things don't have to be perfect to
Right.
be happy.
Right. Love that.
Because you waste so much energy on worrying about what other people think, and like all these opportunities I missed out of, I limited myself so much, and I could have had so, and I did have fun in high
Right.
school. I thought high school was hard, but it was awesome
Right.
too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so, but it could have been even so much more fun, and I would have had so many more opportunities, and you can enjoy things as they are before they get better. And it's there. It still doesn't mean that you can't want things to get better.
Right.
So
yeah, that's great advice. Be happy now, not happy when.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when I hit my goals, or enjoy the journey, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Hopefully you guys heard that. Be happy now. That's great advice. That is awesome. So, tell us kind of what you're doing now, like this very moment. Like, what are you working on now? Are you doing another book? Are you, what do you kind of focus on in this moment? Or are you just doing the training right now?
I'm mainly doing training right now, but I love the internet and all this technology, because 20 years ago when I started, I thought I only get to work with people who live by me, right? Yeah. And my clients were people who could drive to me. So my biggest thing right now is I have an online private Facebook group that I do monthly coaching with. And so I have, it's called the Body Joy Slim Down Challenge. And I have people as young as 12 years old. My oldest client is 87. She just turned 87 this year.
87, never too late, right?
No, never. And it's kind of never too early to start working on being better too, right? And so sure. I have high school kids do it too, but it's a private Facebook group, and they get nutrition coaching and workouts and daily accountability, where I'm on every day and giving them either writing positive things for them to think about. We're sharing recipes with each other and ideas of how to just make your life healthier and happier. And that's my biggest thing right now. Very and cool. I still have my online clients that I do a few days a week. And so, but with, I always thought that as your kids got older, I'd go back to work longer. And both of my girls are in high school now, but I'm almost as busy or more busy than when they were little. And so amazing? I haven't gone back to working full time. Maybe I'll do another book when they're done with high school, and it's a little less busy, but I love being part of their lives. And so, yeah, my career is kind of second to them right now, but it's awesome. It's fun.
Yeah. Your girls are awesome. I mean, everyone that knows your girls are like, they're the nicest people.
Oh, thank you.
You've done a great job raising those two girls.
They're good
I know
girls.
You and TJ are great parents, and people who know you too, they think you guys are the nicest people.
My girls came out pretty good to begin with, and I love that they're actually two of my heroes.
Right.
So I always thought, you look up to I've been able to work with Bethany Hamilton, who lost her arm as a 12-year-old, and it was amazing to see her faith and her positivity and how she's overcome challenges. And I look at my girls just as they're on the same pedestal to me as someone like that, because it's hard to be a teenager right now, and it's hard to navigate life and make good choices. And they do make good choices most of the time, but they struggle too, and it's so much harder than I feel like it was for us. And there's so much pressure, and then to have your life on Instagram and social media is hard, and so they're two of my heroes, and I just love watching them make choices and watching them have their whole lives ahead of them still,
That's
and see
amazing.
what they're going to be capable of
Yeah.
doing, and
Well,
they inspire me to be better.
they're great girls, so I can see why they're your heroes. That's really cool. So, do you have a weekly challenge that we could give out to the people who are listening?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should have them do Joey's because that one is so good.
Right.
So it's writing down 3 positives or gratitudes every day, and
Right.
I actually do that every day. So
Yeah.
I feel like you have to have one for your mind since it's a belief cast.
Right.
But since I'm a trainer, you have to do one with. I'm going to give you one for movement and then meals too, because all those things affect your belief and your mind.
Totally agree.
It's crazy. And so I feel like you have to at least get 10 minutes of moving outside a day. Okay. That's huge. Even if it's cold, you can handle 10 minutes. There's something about being outside.
Yeah.
And it's grounding. It helps you refocus. You're grateful for beautiful surroundings.
Well, even that coldness kind of wakes you up.
Yeah,
it? You know? Kind of makes you feel alive.
It just helps you move, and so get 10 minutes of movement in, and even if it's something too where it's just like a quick walk, or yesterday, Lexi, my junior, we did a fast, short workout, and we just did some push-ups and tricep dips. We didn't even use weights for a minute, and you can do stuff. You don't need a gym. Yeah. So 10 minutes, move.
10 minutes. We all have 10 minutes. This is
Yeah, no matter who you are. And then I think with meals, try to replace one packaged food with a fruit or vegetable. So maybe instead of snacking on like a cookie or beef jerky or nuts or something like that, grab an apple instead. Grab some carrots. Grab some guacamole with your veggies instead of chips with your guacamole. So just the more real, fresh food that you have in your body, the better your body and mind will work. And it's amazing the effect that food has on your mind. Yeah. And that was probably the thing I noticed before it had an effect on my body physically, was how much more clear I thought, how much happier I felt. The nutrients for your mind is huge. Yeah. And there's people that can get off of, I've had clients on anti-anxiety and depression medication that their doctors have put them on a prescription like omega, and omegas are in fish and some nuts and like chia seeds and flaxseed. Some of these foods we can get it naturally. They've been able to get off of medication because they have put in omegas in their body. And I love that there's no side effects now with that, but very cool. It helps your brain. Omegas are huge for your brain. So I wish I would have knew that I liked fish as a teenager. I never tried it. Right. But I love salmon, and so it's so good for your brain too.
Wow, that's awesome. So there's the challenge, folks. I'm going to do it myself. I need to be better, especially with the meal part. I'm always eating packaged snacks.
I know.
So I'm going to start eating more fruit and more vegetables and that kind of thing.
I love it.
So I need to start doing that as well. Any last things you'd want to share with our listeners?
No, I think that this is awesome. Well, I think that, they should listen to all the other podcasts if they haven't, because they're truly inspiring. So I love how you are a huge beacon of light to our youth, and I appreciate that as a mom of teenagers. And I know so many people whose lives you've touched, and so I appreciate you doing what you're doing, and it's amazing what you've overcome. And I think that's some of the darkest, hardest things to overcome here on this planet of ours. So
well, thank you. And I think back, what you went through is actually led up to what you're doing now. So I think life happens for us. Definitely. And so as hard as that was growing up, as hard as those belief systems you were holding on to that held you back, it hadn't been for those, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now. I mean, look what you're doing now. You're doing the same thing. You're helping people every single day. You're making a difference, and it's not just the physical, it's the mental and the spiritual. Everyone who knows you thinks you're wonderful. They can't say enough about you. You guys got to get to know her. So how, if people want to get a hold of you and follow you, how would they do that?
I have a website that's just www.mindybuxton.com. And then on Instagram is where I post pretty much most of my free information. And so that's just Mindy Bucks.
Mindy Bucks.
So
Mindy Bucks, you need to follow her.
Yeah, and
reach
Buxton,
out to her.
I guess we should. It's Buxton.
Yeah.
Sometimes people spell that wrong.
Like, what's Buxton? How do you spell that?
Yeah, Buck. I'm like, nope, Bux.
So reach out to her, you guys. She's just inspiring, got a wealth of knowledge. If you need help on any aspect, or if you know someone who needs help, reach out to her and get in line with her. We'll be posting this soon on all social medias, so stay tuned. It'll be in the next couple days. And anyway, it was my honor to have you on this. This was amazing. I feel inspired.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Todd.
You're the best. Okay. See you, peeps. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.